What are we standing in? This is gorgeous.
We are standing in a field of California poppies as far as the eye can see.
Oh, it is breathtaking.
And they are all open because it's a sunny day and blooming and abuzz with bees. It's really, really a gorgeous sight.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of Kevin Jordan or his guests. These gardening tips and suggestions may work for you, as well as those from alternative sources. When using any garden products or tools, read and follow all label directions. And learn how to make your yard summer strong at bewatersmart.info.
The Green Acres Garden Podcast is the podcast dedicated to helping gardeners hone their growing skills while we celebrate our love of plants. So whether you're new to growing or a seasoned gardener, you're sure to learn something new. Join the fun as we have conversations with world-class growers, passionate green thumbs, and professional garden experts from Green Acres Nursery and Supply. Listen every week. We'll answer questions you didn't know you had. All right, it's grow time. Welcome, everybody. Life's a Garden. Dig it. So glad you could make it to the show. This is the greenest show around, the show for plant lovers just like you. This is the Green Acres Garden Podcast. I'm your happy host. I smell a little bit like compost. My name's Kevin Jordan, back in studio, and I'm really just fired up on this week's episode. The topic, we had an amazing guest this week, and so I loved it. It was a beautiful adventure, but before I step on that, I really want to know that your perspective, I can gush over plants and meeting people and all these experiences, and people maybe, I don't know if people getting tired of it, because I love it. But I'm really curious to see what you thought of it, because I had the time of my life out there.
You know what? I did too, Kevin. It was a beautiful day at Hedgerow Farms. I didn't know what to expect. I kind of went into it open and ready for everything. And, one of the first things that happens when we get there is they say we need boots. And I'm like, oh, what are we getting into? Thankfully, I brought my boots, so I was prepared for that. But gosh, we went out to this farm and they grow wild flowers, and it was gorgeous. And the day was bright and sunny and beautiful. The flowers were full and lush, and all the people that we met there were so kind, and they know their stuff too. I really loved our guest, Julia. She was really able to connect with you. You guys were talking like
Loved
plant
it.
language. What did you think of our guest?
Dude, I was getting a lesson. I loved it. She was a great teacher, an amazing host out there, got a Ph.D. from UC Davis. I mean, can you say much more? It's pretty cool. She, one of her main titles is the restoration ecologist. I mean, scientist, farmer, their social media guru, and so much more. Pretty impressive person, passion, enthusiasm, but I mean, well-educated, knowledgeable, and now with a ton of experience in cultivation and in this field. Really cool to hear some of the stories of the work they do and going out into the wild and getting these permits and harvesting the seed and cataloging them and bringing them back and then using those seeds to grow plants that can now cultivate millions of seeds. She said that they have over 1 million pounds of seed in storage at any given time. Jeez. Austin, I'm going to do that in the calculator right now to show you. That is a lot. It calculates to a lot. I did the calculation.
You did the math.
Yeah, and it's a lot. And so really cool work. So Austin, one of the reasons I really had a blast at Hedgerow Farms is that I am a fan of growing native plants.
You are?
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. If you can incorporate them into your landscapes in any amount, it can be helpful. There's a lot of people out there. I think there's a hunger and a thirst for people who want to grow natives and learn about them. We've planted them a bit at the school. We've removed some lawn and turf and put in plants that are adapted to our climate or natives. And so there is a hunger out there for people, but the problem is it's really difficult oftentimes to get your hands on native plants. Even nurseries that want to sell them have a hard time finding them.
Oh.
And even when you do, sometimes it's in limited numbers, and maybe it's not the species that you want. There's so many varieties out there, and so what's kind of cool about Hedgerow Farms is the history has been that they provide seed in bulk for massive wildlife restoration projects. But now they're kind of branching off, and they are going to start allowing some of those seeds to be packaged up in packets and sold in retail nurseries pretty soon, hopefully available pretty soon here at a nursery at a Green Acres near you soon.
Yeah, no.
Which is cool because
exciting.
growing from seed is affordable. It's one of the best ways to cultivate plants, especially native plants.
They look even better when you do it by seed.
Yeah,
right?
you can start them on your own. You can direct seed. You can get them. They're going to look good. and you're going to have a lot of variety to choose from. They're going to have 18 different varieties with 20 different options. So you have 2 different packets that are all seed mixes, and then 18 individual varieties.
So cool. So cool. It's an exciting thing that's coming up. So let's go ahead and hear about it from the pros themselves. We had a great day at Hedgerow Farms with Julia. She took us all around and taught us everything about their operation and about the upcoming products that will be available in stores. So let's go check that out now. Here we go.
Julia, how are you doing?
I am doing wonderfully. This is a great, beautiful sunny day, break from the rain. Happy to be here.
Well, that rain knocked any dust and debris. The air is so, I can
know.
smell it out here. I love it. I don't want to blow up winters too much, but I think it's the next best thing. It's so gorgeous out here.
It really is.
But tell us what you do. We're here at Hedgerow Farms. What is Hedgerow Farms, and what is your role here?
Sure. So we are a 300-acre farm that grows native California wildflowers and grasses. We go out into wild areas and collect small amounts of seed and then bring it to our farm and grow it so that we can make it available for restoration projects and retail. So you think about, where does a wildflower come from? We actually go out and get it from the wild, and we grow it right here at our farm in order to make it available. So we have about 50 species of wildflowers and grasses growing on any given season. And we sell those for post-fire, post-flood, any sort of land restoration projects. We sell large quantities of the seed, but we also have a retail store so that home gardeners can have wildflowers growing that were collected and grown right here in Winters.
That is a really good point, because this is a pretty big farm. And before we got going, you mentioned that your first customers weren't the everyday gardener.
Mm-hmm.
Who were your first customers?
Yeah, so I think especially in California, we realized that there's a lot of land that we need to sort of help return back to wildlife habitat.
Absolutely.
And in order to do that, it kind of starts with the plants. Back when our farm started about 35 years ago, our founder, John Anderson, was working with a lot of land managers who were looking for native plants to put back on their properties. And there weren't any available, or if they were in 1-gallon pots.
Expensive.
But you can't do that at the scale of 100 acres, So
where you need thousands and thousands of plants.
Exactly. So we started basically seeing if we could grow these plants as a crop for seed. And the idea is you can take just a handful of seed that you've collected from the wild and use that handful to grow maybe a half an acre. And then maybe the next year you harvest that and grow 2 acres. And then
exponential growth.
Yeah, down the line you've got hundreds and hundreds of pounds of seed available for these projects.
That's incredible. So you said, how long has this been going on? Like, who started this and why?
Yeah, so Hedgerow Farms was founded 35 years ago by a man named John Anderson, and he actually was a veterinary professor at UC Davis. And he bought property out here. It was just a regular agricultural property growing tomatoes and stuff. And he wanted to, A, he was very interested in restoration, and B, he was actually a hunter. And he wanted to create more wildlife habitat on his property to attract the turkeys and things that he wanted to hunt. So
that's fantastic.
That was kind of how he started. And he started off, before he started growing seed, he started planting hedgerows. So at the time, the concept of a hedgerow was really a British tradition.
In between their property lines.
Yeah, these nice, neat hedges of all the same, I don't know exactly what species they actually grow, but, very neat, clean, square-shaped hedges.
It's like a living fence almost.
Living fences, usually in Britain. But what he realized was this is actually a great idea to do native habitat, because in between the fields, if you have, a corridor of native trees and shrubs growing, that will attract wildlife that will then benefit your farm fields. So that's why we're called Hedgerow Farms, because we kind of started this idea of native hedgerows in California farms. And now when you drive around the Central Valley, you see them everywhere.
Yeah, it's even on the drive up here, a lot of your neighbors and different farms in the area, you start to see that more and more.
Yes.
And I noticed some western redbuds and things
Exactly.
like that.
The redbuds are popping.
Oh, they're
now.
beautiful right now. I love them. I'll go up there and I'll nip some of their flowers off and kind of nibble on them.
Oh, yeah.
So that's super rad. For those of us maybe who are new to the idea of gardening or landscaping with natives, why are natives so awesome to utilize in the home garden?
I think that, there's Several different reasons. Why I like natives is because they require a lot less maintenance than some of the ornamental species. So I'm very busy, right?
Yeah.
And so I have, some time to go out in my garden, but honestly, I don't have the amount of time that I wish that I did. And so what I love about natives is the number one thing you need to give a native garden is time. Just time and patience for those plants to establish themselves. And then if you can be patient enough, within a couple years, they're pretty much self-sustaining. And so for me, as long as I, keep an eye on them and once in a while give them some water and once in a while do some pruning, I can have a beautiful garden without having to work too hard. And that's because these plants are adapted to our climate and to our soil type. So even on the hottest Sacramento day, I know that they're doing okay.
That's a really good point. When it comes to maybe some of the insects and different species that we kind of consider beneficials, the birds, the bees, and everything else, is there a connection between what plants we grow and the type of creatures that we lure in to our landscapes?
Yes, and that's the other reason I love native gardens. There are hundreds of native bee species that are not the European honeybee that we think of, which are also very hardworking, very important, creatures. But our native bee species, they come in all different shapes and sizes and colors, and some of them are specialists that only, will visit California native plants. So if you start growing them in your garden and you pay attention, you'll start to see all new species of bees and butterflies come to your garden that you've never seen before. Some of them are teeny tiny and just the cutest. Some of them are shiny and like almost an emerald color.
Do you notice any out here when you're working the fields?
Yes, all the time. And we actually just saw our first monarch butterfly come through last week. So
oh, nice.
That means they're migrating. They love to come to our farm because we grow milkweed here.
Really? Do you the native kind, the narrow leaf or whatever?
Narrow leaf and showy milkweed, yes.
Oh, love it. Monarchs are just they're great to see. It's a good sign.
Yes.
And they're a cool creature that they do their migration occurs in like many generations, like starting a car trip with your great grandfather and then your grandkids have to finish the ride.
It's unbelievable. It's one of nature's mysteries, yeah.
Well, and you mentioned that, a lot of your seed was intended for restoration projects. So, we have no shortage of fire. It's springtime now. It's pretty beautiful. But I'm sure, we're going to get some wildfire. That's a given. How is that seed utilized? And is the hope to maybe get those plants going and then eventually have them create their own populations that are going to be sustainable?
Yes. So one of the things we know is that native bunch grasses are fire resilient. So unlike the annual grasses that are actually not from California, they were brought over by the Spanish in the 1700s. The bunch grasses actually keep water in their tissue all summer long. So when they burn, they don't burn very hot because they still have that water in their tissue. So they kind of cool down fires, they slow them down. So a fire that runs across a bunchgrass field is gonna go slower and lower in terms of temperature than one that goes across a non-native field.
Like star thistle.
Yes, exactly. And so the idea is that at least in some areas, once we've restored it back to a native grassland, it should be able to recover from wildfire better than previously.
That's pretty incredible to think about how the plants that have evolved for millennia around fire kind of have a way of utilizing it.
Yeah, and
or surviving.
we burn at this farm. So last fall we did we'll go to some bunchgrass fields later where you can see where we actually did controlled burns, and we made it an experiment. Actually, we looked at should we mow before we burn, and mowing of course is kind of a stand-in for grazing if you were a larger land manager, and we showed that fire actually can have benefits even in our farm fields.
That's cool. I like the controlled burn style.
Yeah.
So for those of us, people are listening, they can't see this. We're staring out into a field. We're seeing the field is covered with blossoms. Talk about Purple Mountain's majesty. I think that must have gone back to the lupin.
I think so.
So tell us a little bit about the lupin here and maybe some of the other plants that are before us.
Sure. So we are staring at a field of 3 different species of California native wildflowers. The first is a perennial yarrow, which you may have heard of.
Oh, yeah.
It's a medicinal plant. People really love it for their yards because it's hardy. It's got green foliage all year round.
It's all feathery.
Yeah, it's feathery. Some people mistake it for a fern. And I think of the flowers as little helicopter landing pads for butterflies because they're nice and flat on the top. So that's a great perennial, right? So once you plant that in your garden, it's not going to go anywhere. Next to it is an annual lupin. So this is something that grows, blooms, it dies back, and then but it reseeds itself. And so this purple lupin, this is a succulent lupin. It does really, really well in full sun. It's super easy to grow. It's one of the first species that I suggest to people who are interested in trying. It's in the legume family, so it actually pulls nitrogen out of the atmosphere and puts it in the soil.
Nice.
So it's a fertilizer. And
so we're cover cropping out here in a way. Yeah,
absolutely. It's a cover crop. And, pollinators love it. And
they look pretty lush.
Yes.
You said they're succulent.
Very, very succulent, yes.
There's some juicy looking stems on there.
Exactly. And it's kind of cool if you want to join me.
Yeah, of course.
You can actually see the nitrogen fixing happening in the roots. So because this is a farm, it's okay for me to pull out some of these plants. I wouldn't do this in a wild-in context, but oops, let's do this.
We're going to see some little nodules.
Yes, exactly.
Love a good nodule.
Yeah, so there are going to be, this is probably not a good one. There's some nodules, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So there's the bacteria that fix the nitrogen are housed in these little nodules on the roots of the lupin. So it's really cool because it's a symbiotic relationship where, the nitrogen-fixing bacteria like to live in the little house that the roots have made for them, and they benefit from all of the, the juices and water and sugar that the plants are creating, and then the plants get free fertilizer from them. And we get free fertilizer from them as well.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. So we talked about how you had the seeds for restoration, but you have something kind of new to announce. You guys have mentioned that you're kind of moving into the retail space a little bit.
Yes, so for the longest time we were, focusing on these big restoration projects, trying to create lots of seed, but we didn't have time to take our big bags of seed and parse them out into little envelopes for smaller projects. So someone would come to us and say, I want to start a native garden. Can I have some seed? And I'm like, do you want 10 pounds or 100 pounds? And they were like run away
screaming. A few ounces, yeah.
Yeah. So it was really difficult to get the scale correct. So we partnered with a company called Nature Seed, and they sell, they're an online retailer that sells seed of many different varieties, so cover crops and wildflowers from other states, but they created a page specifically for us called the California Collection, where they're going to sell all of our seed in packet quantities, and they're going to have about 140 species available.
That's incredible. Mm-hmm. I hope that is wildly successful for you guys.
It is, and the best part is we're actually going to be able to take those packets and bring them to retail stores like Green Acres and have them on the shelves at your stores.
Hootalolly, how many species do you think are going to be able to get into the retail stores?
This spring, we're hoping to have 20 species. 18 are going to be single species, and 2 are going to be mixes that are specifically designed for the Central Valley, so for your customers.
Oh, that's fun. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a big push and a big need, I think, for some natives in our home gardens and landscaping. There's a lot of people out there that I think are interested. So I definitely hope that you find you find some fans.
I have no doubt.
Cool.
The seeds honestly sell themselves. All you have to do is interact with some native species and just see how easy they are to grow. And you don't even need that much space. You can do them in a pot on your patio, especially like lupins and poppies. And it brings so much joy. And there's just something so cool about growing a wild species, right? Like these are wild animals.
Yeah.
They do what they want, and they're it's fascinating to watch them bloom and to think about the difference in timing. Sometimes they come up early spring, sometimes they take a little longer. So it's a really special endeavor.
And these ones, all the plants out here look super lush and healthy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't notice any irrigation lines in the ground. Is this just all open irrigated?
So we do irrigate at the beginning of the season. So if you're going to be planting native seeds, you're still going to want to irrigate when they're young. And it's not a tomato plant where you have to do deep watering, right? You're just keeping that top 1/4 inch of soil moist so those seeds can germinate. If you plant and you time it perfectly with the rain, you don't need to necessarily water at all. But we like to give them a little bit of extra overhead irrigation. But by now, right, these plants are they're blooming. We don't have to irrigate them at all. So what we're hoping now is that they're just going to bloom, do their thing, turn into seed, and then we'll harvest the seed.
That is really cool.
Do you want to see some of the poppies?
I would love to. I was like, then there's a whole belt of gold over here. What are those?
So this is a different species of poppy than you might be familiar with.
So not the Eschschlosia.
It is still Eschschlosia.
Yeah.
Whoever came up with that name.
Yeah.
ESCH, SCH.
I can't spell it. Yeah, I can't spell it or say it.
Eschscholzia cespitosa. So you know
Nice.
Eschscholzia californica, which is
Yep.
the state poppy. This is a lesser known species that grows just as easily. This
they're
is
beautiful.
the tufted poppy. And so it's a little smaller, a little paler in terms of color, more like a pale yellow. Very sweet. It would be great for a garden edge. Attracts a lot of pollinators. And it's an annual too, so grows quickly. And it does a little bit better in some of the foothill areas. So this was one you might see when you're more, exploring the foothills. And that's where we collected it from originally, and that's where it's probably going to go back to.
They're beautiful. Now, you mentioned you collect them out in the wild. Is that legal? How do you do that? Or did I get you? Were you busted?
We're not like running away from landowners, no.
Yeah.
Although, who knows?
Get them, it's Hedgerow.
35 years ago when we started, I can't speak to
You gotta ask for forgiveness sometimes.
How legal it was,
instead of
but now
permission.
we are collecting with full permits. So we work with the federal and the state government to get collection permits. We have trained botanists that have been doing this for decades. They are some of the most incredible botanists I've ever encountered. They identify a species, they talk with the landowner, and we have a plan ahead of time exactly how much we're allowed to collect. We bring that collection back to the farm, we clean it to make sure there's no weeds or anything else that we're introducing to our farm.
That's got to be a difficult process.
It sure is, and if we have a moment, we can go into the cleaning barn.
I'd love to see it.
Pretty cool.
This is really cool. One thing I want to ask you before I even forget is, outside of the knowledge that you learned throughout, through your times at UC Davis, but how do you're so knowledgeable, how do you stay up to date? Where would one go? Where would you encourage people to go who are maybe just normies and newbies? Where would you want them to go learn, to kind of maybe get some of the knowledge that you're been working with?
I would very much put myself in the normie category. I think that compared to some of the botanists that I know, I'm just a super fan. But the best place is the California Native Plant Society's website. They have been making a huge effort in the last couple years especially to reach out to sort of more inexperienced people and help them join their cause. So there's a website called Bloom California that is all about helping you start planting natives in your garden, and they help you pick out species, and I'm pretty sure that different nurseries can work directly with Bloom California, so that's a really great place to go.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Is it still true with the right plant, right place, even with natives? Because I know there's a lot of natives for California, but California is a pretty big place, and not all of our biomes and environments are all the same. Mm-hmm. Does that kind of advice still hold true?
Absolutely. So ideally, you want to plant species that grow nearby you in your wild areas. So if you're walking along the Sacramento River and you see some plants growing, some wildflowers there, there's a pretty good chance they're going to do well in your yard because they're not too far away. If you're up in the high Sierra, there might be a totally different microclimate. And even though as the crow flies, it's not that far, if there's a difference in elevation or soil type or climate, we have so many different microclimates in California. So in general, what we try and do is help you pick out plants that are appropriate for your ecoregion within California.
What are some of your favorite varieties? Like if you were going to start from scratch and maybe you had three to five varieties that you would suggest for me, say I'm going to go home and grab some seed and go home and plant right now.
Absolutely.
I live in Sacramento. Where would you recommend?
Okay, the species that I would recommend to start off with. I would definitely do some lupin just because they're so beautiful and they'll help you build your soil. But I want to think about some things that are going to be blooming in the summer and the late summer, early fall as well.
Kind of stagger that bloom.
Yeah, you want to keep the bloom going. So my favorite is Grindelia camporum, or California gum plant. It's a plant that is bright yellow. It almost looks like a daisy, but it's super hardy. And when I'm thinking about those 110-degree days, I want to have something that's blooming then. So if I plant now, I can make sure they'll have something blooming deep into the summer.
When everything else is struggling, that's going to look nice.
So that one for sure. So now I've got some purple, I've got some yellow. It's time to think about some pink, right? So Clarkias are another ones that I love. They're also a little bit of a later bloomer, and there's several species of Clarkia that grow well here. And I think Clarkia purpurea would be one of the more easy ones to grow. So with that, I would have yellow, pink, and purple, 3 species, certain to bring me joy in the first year of growing. And then hopefully the lupin and the Clarkia would reseed themselves, and the Grindelia is a perennial, so that will just stick around.
That's cool. So if somebody grows some of your seeds, some of your plants from seed, and those plants go to seed, can they harvest their own, are those seeds replantable?
Absolutely. You can harvest your own, and it's really fun. I recommend everybody to interact with the seeds of the plants that you're growing, just because I don't know, it's just a very tactile, cool experience. You can also just let them disperse on their own too. So plants have all kinds of adaptations to, poppies and lupids actually explode their seed pods open so they can kind of throw them a little bit farther than where they're growing. So if you just leave them alone, they'll also reseed themselves.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
You seem extremely passionate as well as knowledgeable. And so I've learned so much from you already, but what really does it for you? What sparks joy in you when it comes to these plants? What do you love most about working with plants, about bringing more native plants to people who want to grow them?
Yeah, I just, there's so many environmental challenges that seem so huge and daunting and make you feel powerless. And I think this is a problem that we have the power to absolutely solve. If everybody planted native plants in their gardens, we would keep, a large proportion of our pollinators from going extinct, and we would be able to create huge amounts of habitat for some of our birds and mammals that otherwise don't have a place to live in our cities. And so I think this is just the type of project that is, you can take a bite off of it and actually do something in your lifetime, in the time scale of a year even, watching your garden transform. So I think the emotional component of it for me is really important, just sort of feeling like you have the power to do some good and seeing those benefits.
Well, I'm seeing the benefits right now. We are definitely going to have to post these photos to our Facebook group,
I sure
the
hope
Instagram, and all that, because it is gorgeous out here.
Yes.
It's kind of fun to see these wildflowers grown in such a large, concentrated block. Sometimes you kind of see them in the wild. They're always kind of spotty and intermixed in little kind of patches, like how my beard grows in. But out here, it is, they are thick, and it is a wall. As far as I can see in almost every direction, it's gold. I love it.
It's really astounding. And I think what I love about it is it just gives you a chance to focus on a species and appreciate it. And then when you see it growing in little bits all across, in a parking lot somewhere, you'll remember standing in this field and how special that felt. This is, our farm is not just a native seed farm. It's also a venue and a hub for native plant education. So, one of the things you can do is follow our Instagram or go to our website, and we do have public events, and we'd love to have, everybody out to come see our fields.
And what's that website?
It's just hedgerowfarms.com, or our Instagram is hedgerow_farms.
Easy enough. Wait, well, Julia, this has been a blast on the farm. I got to cultivate my inner micro today. We got a little dirty. It was awesome. I learned so much. And I loved natives before coming in here, but I've never seen this many beautiful in bloom natives, different varieties from the grasses to your different poppies and the lupin and so on. It's breathtaking out here, so I just want to thank you so much. I'm even more fired up now about growing them, especially if I can get my hands on some seed.
You absolutely can. Yes, you got the seed hookup now from now on.
Absolutely.
And all of your Green Acres customers will too, so
I cannot wait.
About that.
Well, Julia, thank you so much for giving us a lesson in your time, and thank you again for all that you do here. We love it, and we need more folks like you.
Thank you. You too.
All right, we are back. Big thank you to Julia Michaels. Thank you for showing us around and introducing us to all the workers there and everything that's going on. I had an absolute blast. Like I said before, it was one of the best days, working on the podcast ever. It was just so beautiful out there. Kevin, what are your big takeaways from the day? I know there's a lot to cover here, a lot, that was shared, but what are you thinking?
Julia rocks. Hedgerow Farms is a cool place with amazing people doing incredible work that is absolutely needed. I love our farmers and love all that. And what's really cool is they're working on kind of balancing everything out and bringing those natives back, providing opportunity for people, not just economically for the folks that work there, but for all of us Californians or anybody. It's like you don't have to be Californian to appreciate a native plant. We have listeners who may be listening in other states. You have native plants that are special to where you live that support wildlife and the biology and the ecosystems of where you live as well. And so I think planting native plants in our gardens and incorporating them in our landscapes in any amount or level can have beneficial and positive impacts. So for that, I love what they do. I had a blast out there. It was like living in a painting It was so beautiful out there right now with different plants blooming. It was gorgeous. I loved it. So thank you. For those of us, if you're not sold on it, California has over 6,500 species, according to the Department of Fish and Wildlife, of plants that are native to California. So there are a lot of options out there. Some of these plants are beautiful, they're seasonal, and they provide so much to our native wildlife that they definitely deserve a place.
It makes me think of something that Julia said, was that a lot of the ones they're going to be, like the ones that we're going to be getting in seed packets in the stores soon, are like really for the Central Valley. So it's not even just native to California, but even more localized to our area. And one, I think she was talking about, they sourced it from somewhere very, very close by. So these are like the plants we for sure want to be growing in our yards.
Absolutely. And they can actually tick the same boxes that some of our traditional plants that we talk about each week. They can be low maintenance. They can be low water. They provide habitat that's beneficial to insects. It's like all those things that we love about other plants. They do that as well, and in spades. So it's pretty cool. I loved it. Hopefully we'll be back. Actually, it's funny that they're called Hedgerow Farms, but hedgerow growing is actually its own separate thing, where you have hedgerows around your farms. That's a whole other topic. I think we're going to have her back on in the future to talk about it, because she showed us some out there, and it was really incredible because they showed a property line where there's an irrigation canal where some of the overflow can go. On one side of the canal is their property where they have hedgerows, where it's a collection of native plants and grasses and wildflowers and shrubs. And on the other side is a more traditional agriculture where it's just stripped bare. On the other side, the soil is sloping into the canal. It's eroding away. On her side, with their hedgerow, it's thriving and beautiful.
Oh, wow.
It's intact. They haven't lost soil to erosion like the other. It's just visible. We looked at. So there's a lot to talk about. It's so much more to learn. I love native plants, and I think our listeners will too. Give them a shot. There's so much to learn. If you want to, she mentioned going to the California Native Plant Society website. Well, Austin, I'm sure he can link that in the description.
That. And then the seeds are going to be available soon in stores in May.
Yes, absolutely. That's exciting. So hopefully something to look forward to.
Yeah.
Native plants, folks. This just grow wild. All right, folks. Until next time, garden friends, that's all my time for now. But we have more garden adventures planned for next week, so please come back for more. Share us with a friend. And until next time, garden friends, happy gardening to you all. And please, never stop growing. Natives!